Why, as to old Tom's human nature, it is not much like other men's human nature, but more like a muskrat's human nature, seeing that he takes more to the ways of that animal than to the ways of any other fellow creature. Some think he was a free liver on the salt water in his youth, and a companion of a certain kid who was hanged for piracy long afore you and I were born or acquainted, and that he came up into these regions thinking that the king's cruisers could never cross the mountains, and that he might enjoy the plunder peaceably in the woods. Then he was wrong, Hurry, very wrong. A man can enjoy plunder peaceably nowhere. That's much as his turn of mind may happen to be. I've known them that never could enjoy it at all, unless it was in the midst of a jollification, and them again that enjoyed it best in a corner. Some men have no peace if they don't find plunder, and some if they do. Human nature is crooked in these matters. Old Tom seems to belong to neither set, as he enjoys his, if plunder he has really got, with his darters, in a very quiet and comfortable way, and wishes for no more. Aye, he has darters too. I've heard the Delawares who've hunted this away tell their histories of these young women. Is there no mother, Hurry? There was once, as in reason, but she has now been dead and sunk these 2 good years. Anon, said Deerslayer, looking up at his companion in a little surprise. Dead and sunk, I say, and I hope that's good English. The old fellow lowered his wife into the lake by way of seeing the last of her, and I can testify, being an eyewitness of the ceremony, but whether Tom did it to save digging, which is no easy job among roots, or out of a conceit that water washes away sin sooner than earth, is more than I can say. Was the poor woman uncommon wicked, that her husband should take so much pains with her body? Not unreasonable, though she had her faults. I consider Judith Hutter to have been as graceful, and about as likely to make a good end as any woman who had lived so long beyond the sound of church bells, and I conclude old Tom sunk her as much by way of saving pains as by way of taking it. There was a little steel in her temper, it's true, and, as old Hutter is pretty much flint, they struck out sparks once in a while, but on the whole they might be said to live amicably alike. When they did kindle, the listeners got some such insights into their past lives as one gets into the darker parts of the woods, when a stray gleam of sunshine finds its way down to the roots of the trees. But Judith I shall always esteem, as it's recommended enough to one woman to be the mother of such a creature as her darter, Judith Hutter. Aye, Judith was the name the Delawares mentioned, though it was pronounced after a fashion of their own. From their discourse, I do not think the girl would much please my fancy. Thy fancy, exclaimed March, taking fire equally at the indifference and at the presumption of his companion. What the devil have you got to do with a fancy at that, and that, too, concerning one like Judith? You are but a boy, a sapling, that has scarce got root. Judith has had men among her suitors, ever since she was 15, which is now near 5 years, and will not be apt even to cast a look upon a half-grown creature like you. It is June, and there is not a cloud atween us and the sun. Hurry, so all this heat is not wanted, answered the other, altogether undisturbed. Any one may have a fancy, and a squirrel has a right to make up his mind touching a catamount. Aye, but it might not be wise always to let the catamount know it, growled March. But you're young and thoughtless, and I'll overlook your ignorance. Come, Deerslayer, he added, with a good-natured laugh, after pausing a moment to reflect. Come, Deerslayer, we are sworn friends, and will not quarrel about a light-minded, jilting jade, just because she happens to be handsome, more especially as you have never seen her. Judith is only for a man whose teeth show the full marks, and it's foolish to be afeard of a boy. What did the Delawares say of the hussy? For an Indian, after all, has his notions of womankind as well as a white man. They said she was fair to look on and pleasant of speech, but overgiven to admirers and light-minded. They are devils incarnate. After all, what schoolmaster is a match for an Indian in looking into nature? Some people think they are only good on a trail or the warpath, but I say that they are philosophers and understand a man as well as they understand a beaver and a woman as well as they understand either. Now, that's Judith's character to a ribbon. To own the truth to you, Deerslayer, I should have married the gal 2 years since, if it had not been for two particular things, one of which was this very light-mindedness. And what may have been the other? Demanded the hunter, who continued to eat like one that took very little interest in the subject. T'other was an uncertainty about her having me. The hussy is handsome, and she knows it. Boy, not a tree that is growing in these hills is straighter or waves in the wind with an easier bend, nor did you ever see the doe that bounded with a more natural motion. If that was all, every tongue would sound her praises, but she has such failings that I find it hard to overlook them, and sometimes I swear I'll never visit the lake again. Which is the reason that you always come back. Nothing is ever more sure by swearing about it. Ah, Deerslayer, you are a novelty in these particulars, keeping as true to education as if you had never left the settlements. With me the case is different, and I never want to clinch an idea, that I do not feel a wish to swear about it. If you knowed all that I know concerning Judith, you'd find a justification for a little cussing. Now, the officers sometimes stray over the lake, from the forts on the Mohawk, to fish and hunt, and then the creature seems beside herself. You can see in the manner which she wears her finery, and the airs she gives herself with the gallants. That is unseemly in a poor man's daughter, returned Deerslayer gravely. The officers are all gentry, and can only look on such as Judith with evil intentions. There's the uncertainty, and the damper. I have my misgivings about a particular captain, and Jude has no one to blame but her own folly, if I am right. On the whole, I wish to look upon her as modest and becoming, and yet the clouds that drive among these hills are not more uncertain. Not a dozen white men have ever laid eyes upon her since she was a child, and yet her heirs, with 2 or 3 of these officers are extinguishers. I would think no more of such a woman, but turn my mind altogether to the forest. That will not deceive you, being ordered and ruled by a hand that never wavers. If you'd know Judith, you would see how much easier it is to say this than it would be to do it. Could I bring my mind to be easy about the officers, I would carry the gal off to the Mohawk by force, make her marry me in spite of her whiffling, and leave old Tom to care of Hetty, his other child, who, if she be not as handsome or as quick-witted as her sister, is much the most dutiful. Is there another bird in the same nest? Asked Deerslayer, raising his eyes with a species of half-awakened curiosity. The Delaware spoke to me only of one. That's natural enough when Judith Hutter and Hetty Hutter are in question. Hetty is only comely, while her sister, I tell thee, boy, is such another as is not to be found atween this and the sea. Judith is as full of wit and talk and cunning as an old Indian orator, while poor Hetty is at best but compass meant to us. Anan? Inquired again the Deerslayer. Why, what the officers call compass meant us, which I understand to signify that she means always to go in the right direction, but sometimes does not know how. Compass for the point, and meant us for the intention. No, poor Hetty is what I call on the verge of ignorance, and sometimes she stumbles on one side of the line and sometimes on the other. Them are beings that the Lord has in his special care," said Deerslayer solemnly, "for he looks carefully to all who fall short of their proper share of reason. The redskins honor and respect them who are so gifted, knowing that the evil spirit delights more to dwell in an artful body than in one that has no cunning to work upon. I'll answer for it, then, that he will not remain long with poor Hetty, for the child is just compass meant us. As I have told you, old Tom has a feeling for the gal, and so has Judith, quick-witted and glorious as she is herself, else would I not answer for her being altogether safe among the sort of men that sometimes meet on the lake shore." "I thought this water an unknown and little frequented sheet," observed the Deerslayer, evidently uneasy at the idea of being too near the world. "It's all that, lad, the eyes of 20 white men never having been laid on it. Still 20 true-bred frontiersmen, hunters and trappers and scouts and the like can do a deal of mischief if they try. 'Twould be an awful thing to me, Deerslayer, did I find Judith married after an absence of 6 months. Have you the gal's faith to encourage you to hope otherwise? Not at all. I know not how it is. I am good-looking, boy. That much I can see in any spring on which the sun shines, and yet I could not get the hussy to a promise, or even a cordial, willing smile, though she will laugh by the hour. If she has dared to marry in my absence, she'd be like to know the pleasures of widowhood afore she's 20. You would not harm the man she has chosen, Hurry, simply because she found him more to her liking than yourself? Why not? If an enemy crosses my path, will I not beat him out of it? Look at me. Am I a man like to let any sneaking, crawling, skin trader get the better of me in a matter that touches me as near as the kindness of Judith Hutter? Besides, when we live beyond law, we must be our own judges and executioners. And if a man should be found dead in the woods, who is there to say who slew him? Even admitting that the colony took the matter in hand and made a stir about it. If that man should be Judith Hutter's husband, after what has passed, I might tell enough, at least, to put the colony on the trail. You, half-grown, venison-hunting bantling, you dare to think of informing against Harry in so much as a matter touching a mink or a woodchuck? I would dare to speak truth, Hurry, concerning you or any man that ever lived." March looked at his companion for a moment in silent amazement. Then, seizing him by the throat with both hands, he shook his comparatively slight frame with a violence that menaced the dislocation of some of the bones. Nor was this done jocularly, for anger flashed from the giant's eyes, and there were certain signs that seemed to threaten much more earnestness than the occasion would appear to call for. Whatever might be the real intention of March, and it is probable there was none settled in his mind, it is certain that he was unusually aroused, and most men who found themselves throttled by one of a mold so gigantic, in such a mood, and in a solitude so deep and helpless, would have felt intimidated and tempted to yield even the right. Not so, however, with Deerslayer. His countenance remained unmoved, his hand did not shake, and his answer was given in a voice that did not resort to the artifice of louder tones, even by way of proving its owner's resolution. "You may shake, Hurry, until you bring down the mountain." You may shake, Hurry, until you bring down the mountain," he said quietly. "But nothing beside truth will you shake from me. It is probable that Judith Hutter has no husband to slay, and you may never have a chance to waylay one, else would I tell her of your threat in the first conversation I held with the gal." March released his grip and sat regarding the other in silent astonishment. "I thought we had been friends," he at length added, "but you've got the last secret of mine that will ever enter your ears. I want none, if they are to be like this. I know we live in the woods, Hurry, and are thought to be beyond human laws, and perhaps we are so, in fact, whatever it may be in right, but there is a law and a law-maker. That rule across the whole continent. He that flies in the face of either need not call me a friend. Damn it! Damn! Dear Slayer, if I do not believe you are at heart a Moravian and no fair-minded, plain-dealing hunter as you've pretended to be. Fair-minded or not, Hurry, you will find me as plain-dealing in deeds as I am in words. But this giving way to sudden anger is foolish, and proves how little you have sojourned with the red man. Judith Hutter, no doubt, is still single, and you spoke but as the tongue ran, and not as the heart felt. There's my hand, and we will say and think no more about it. Hurry seemed more surprised than ever. Then he burst forth in a loud, good-natured laugh, which brought tears to his eyes. After this he accepted the offered hand, and the parties became friends. "'Twould have been foolish to quarrel about an idea," March cried, as he resumed his meal, and more like lawyers in the towns than like sensible men in the woods. They tell me, dear Slayer, much ill blood grows out of ideas among the people in the lower counties, and that they sometimes get to extremities upon them. That do they. 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 And about other matters that might be better left to take care of themselves. I have heard the Moravians say that there are lands in which men quarrel even concerning their religion, and if they can get their tempers up on such a subject, Hurry, the Lord have mercy on them. Howsoever, there is no occasion for our following their example, and more especially about a husband that this Judith Hutter may never see or never wish to see. For my part, I feel more curiosity about the feeble-witted sister than about your beauty. There's something that comes close to a man's feelings when he meets with a fellow creature that has all the outward show of an accountable mortal, and who fails of being what he seems, only through a lack of reason. This is bad enough in a man, but when it comes to a woman and she a young and maybe a winning creature, it touches all the pitiful thoughts his nature has. God knows, Hurry, that such poor things be defenseless enough with all their wits about them. But it's a cruel fortune when that great protector and guide fails them. Hark, dear Slayer, you know what the hunters and trappers and peltry men in general be, and their best friends will not deny that they are headstrong and given to having their own way, without much bethinking them of other people's rights or feelings. And yet I don't think the man is to be found in all this region who would harm Hetty Hutter if he could. No, not even a redskin. There ain't, friend Hurry. You do the Delawares at least and all their allied tribes only justice, for a redskin looks upon a being thus struck by God's power as especially under his care. I rejoice to hear what you say. However, I rejoice to hear it. But as the sun is beginning to turn towards the afternoon sky, had we not better strike the trail again and make forward, that we may get an opportunity of seeing these wonderful sisters? Harry marched, giving a cheerful assent. The remnants of the meal were soon collected. Then the travelers shouldered their packs, resumed their arms, and, quitting the little area of light, they again plunged into the deep shadows of the forest.